Okay. Okay, so thank you for joining us. We felt that it's extremely important to be able to get information out there. We've been obviously running the Chabad for many years, and we've had, we've been privy of knowing a lot of things in people's lives over the years. And unfortunately, we're the go-to people. I mean, and we're happy that we're a go-to people for people with end-of-life questions and end-of-life situations. But we also realize there's a lot of misinformation, and people may not know enough information to make the right choices, I should say, based on Jewish tradition. So we want to make sure that the information's out there so everyone knows. And this is not a taboo topic. We're going to talk freely because, as we know, we're not just body, but we're body and soul. And so living in this world, we want to make sure that we make the right decisions, not just for our health and our bodies, but for the health of our soul as well. And so this is just going to be a casual conversation of both of us together. I believe it was Elie Wiesel that shared a story about these two prisoners of war during the Holocaust. And they knew that at any moment they're going to be called to go to the gas chambers, but they took out a little bit of mashka, of whiskey, and they had two little cups. And they kept making, welcome, Emily. They kept making l'chaim together, and then another l'chaim together. And I think that really reflects what Jewish living is all about, that no matter what we're going through, we are obsessed with living. We make l'chaim, we make more l'chaim, we give people blessings. We want to do everything possible to live a vibrant, joyous life, with knowing that we have a soul inside of us and knowing that Hashem is watching over us. And so we'll make l'chaim now to all of you for joining us, even though this topic might be a little bit, different than what we normally speak about, but it's super important. So really a shout out for all of you for making the effort and joining us right now. It's really important that you're here. And so I'll just start off, and my husband will chime in a little bit, but with this first topic of just the concept of body and soul. So we all know that it says in the Torah that our body came from the ground, Adamah, and therefore the first man that was created, his name was Adam, because he came from the Adamah, from the ground. And he's also going to go back to the Adamah. So that's the first source in the Torah where we kind of get a little bit of a overview of Hashem's plan with humans in this world, okay? The concept of returning to our source, and the concept of respecting our body, and the concept of respecting our soul. It's all literally from the Torah, where it says that Hashem gives our body on loan. And it's something that we're borrowing during our lifetime, and then we return it back to him. Okay? And so if you wanted to add on to that concept.
Yeah, so we all know that in Judaism, we're not just body, even though that's what we see. We see your body, but we have a soul. And how do we know we have a soul? Is because we are alive. And even though I'm speaking right now, but what energizes my body, my mouth to speak is the soul. And at the end of life, after 120, obviously, is that marriage, that fusion between body and soul. It's a separation between the body and soul. And each one, so when we are alive, there is this marriage of body and soul. And when there is this separation, so then the soul goes back to its origin, where it came from, God, divinity. And the body, like my wife just said, it's a quote from Genesis that Adam, the first human being, was created from the ground, from the earth. So it's our responsibility, being that the body is not, even though we think we own the body, that's why in Judaism we cannot make a permanent change in the body, like we don't do tattoos and different things. So the body, we got to return it in the best way we got it. And that's why it goes back to its origin, which the first human being was created from the ground. So that's why we bring it back to the ground. So that is actually a mitzvah. It's brought down in the Torah, that there is the concept of burial, and this concept is brought down in Jewish law. So the first of all is a mitzvah, and second of all is returning it to where it came from its origin.
And just moving a step further, we see in the Torah so many times all written about the different grave sites of people that lived previously, and that it's a very part of our tradition to go and visit these grave sites. Whether it's the Maran HaMachpelah in Hebron in Israel, where Adam and Eve are buried, where Abraham and Sarah are buried, Isaac and Rebecca, Yaakov and Leah. So we have this concept that a burial is this real Jewish tradition that's been passed down for thousands and thousands of years. And so the first person that ever had this concept of finding a burial place that we see was actually Adam. It says in the Torah that when his son died, he was looking outside and he saw a bird bury its own other bird. And when he was watching that happen, he realized that that's what he should be doing for his son that just recently passed away. And so he gave his son who passed away a burial. So that's the first time that we've ever seen that in the Torah of the concept of someone being buried. There's a statement that I just wanted to read. And it goes like this. 1 second. It goes like this. There's that paper.
I remember as a child, with my parents, I used to go and visit Israel every year. And it was one of our big itinerary is to visit a lot of the grave sites, our fathers in the Hebron, and then in Sfat. And it was like the whole thing, to pray at the grave sites of the holy people and our fathers and mothers and so on. So when you think about it, I mean, maybe in Judaism we're used to it, this concept. But when you think about it, and you tell an American person, hey, where did you go? I went to Israel. And what did you see there? You might think, the ocean, the mountain. Also, so many grave sites, So it's funny, but as a kid, that's how I grew up. But why is that reason? Because the grave site of holy, righteous people and our fathers and mothers is a place where we connect with their values, with the roots, and also is a place of holy place to prayers, like the Rebbe's Ohel, which is the Rebbe's gravesite.
And I just want to read to you a statement that I've read. It says, I am a Jew, and I choose to be buried as a Jew. I choose this for the sake of my ancestors. I choose this for the sake of my descendants. I choose this for the sake of my body, and I choose this for the sake of my soul. And I want to just ask the famous question. So where does our soul go? Okay, right? After we pass, where does our soul go? So just interesting to note, we're not going to get too technical here. We're just going to give very relevant information. We have 5 parts to our soul. Okay, it's explained in the Kabbalistic teachings of the Torah. We have the 5 parts of our soul. When a person passes, 3 of those parts of the soul return up to heaven, wherever that heaven is. It goes there. The 2 bottom levels of our soul, which is the nefesh in Hebrew and the ruach, those are the 2 bottom parts. The nefesh remains always at the gravesite, and the ruach travels a bit. Where does the ruach travel? It says that right after the person passes, it's still very much connected to the body. And so it'll travel to the person's house from the gravesite, back to the house, back to the house, back to the gravesite. And then after a certain period of time, we know we have a 3-day mourning period, a 7-day mourning period, a 30-day mourning period. It slowly will then resume its path, which will be from the gravesite up to heaven. And so the ruach will travel up and down eventually. But the first level of our soul, the nefesh, will always remain at the gravesite. That's how it's explained in the Torah, okay? And it's, yes?
So that's why when we visit a gravesite, my wife emphasizing why it's important to have a physical place, because we are connecting not just to the person's body, but also this level of their soul, which is the first level, the nefesh level, which is, so you have like a physical place of connection, not just a spiritual connection, let's say when we do the Kaddish, or when we do a special mitzvah in their merits, but also there is this physical place of connection.
So it's explained in the Talmud and the Yoreh De'ah. Yoreh De'ah is Talmud? Okay. It says, in Shulchan Aruch, okay, be exact, in Shulchan Aruch, which is the halachic law, it says immediately after death, the soul is in a state of confusion. So the question is, why is the soul in a state of confusion? Because it explained that the soul is obsessed with the body, because while the body and the soul were together in this world, it created a partnership. And when the soul leaves the body, it kind of has this really deep concern of what's going to be with the body. And it's watching and it's hovering, watching over what's going to happen. Okay. And so this partnership, right. Just like a marriage, okay? Like you're concerned about the person that you've been married to for so long. You always want to make sure they're okay. The same thing, the soul and the body entered this partnership, this marriage together, and the soul is watching over to see what's going to happen. And it says, and his soul mourns for him. That's another verse that says in the Torah. And another verse says, the soul cries out in pain when the body is treated disrespectfully. So all these little parts coming from the Torah are helping us truly understand that the body has to be treated respectfully even after the soul passes. And the soul is watching over to make sure that that takes place. But that process has to start now. We have to educate ourselves now. What exactly has to happen on this journey? Because even after our body is no longer here, the soul is still on its journey, and it's going to continue on its journey. And at a certain point, it explains in the Torah that there's a stage that's going to happen called the resurrection of the dead. It's one of our 13 principles of belief. And in that stage, the soul reunites back with the body again. And so the soul very much cares about what's going to happen to the body. And so we have to make sure that we give the utmost respect for the human remains, for the body that's being left here. And it's kind of very logical, right? Would any of you on this call, on this Zoom call, would imagine that when the Torah is a little bit, getting older, we just take the Torah and throw it into the garbage? We would never do that. Even the most not practicing Jew or the most remote Jew that doesn't even, had never walked into a synagogue any day of his life, he would say, of course you don't put the Torah in a garbage, right? And would you think that when the mezuzah falls down on the ground, we're going to take the mezuzah and throw in the garbage? We don't need it anymore. We know that there's a whole concept of holy objects in Judaism, and they have to be even disposed in a way that we bury them. We bury the Torah. We bury Jewish books. We don't just dispose of them. And so how much more so we can understand that a body that has done so much in our life, we have to give it the utmost respect when our time comes.
Yeah. So there are also different questions about end of life decisions, like how much treatment do we need to are required and so on. And I know we're not going to go into details because it's beyond the scope of the class here. But just generally speaking, the Torah wants us to be alive. The Torah requires praise for life. So anything that we could do to keep the person alive, we should do. Now the question is to what extent, so that's why every situation is different, and it's very hard to tell, okay, this situation yes, this situation no. But generally speaking, whenever we need to support life or for the person or loved ones, if you have such a decision, and that will include, let's say, food and air, for sure, food, like nutrition, and air if it's oxygen and so on. Now, if it comes to question of intubation, are we required to intubate that person? So generally speaking, yes, because maybe they could come back in certain situation we're not required. So that's why it's very technical, and we cannot take like an answer from this class. Well, in generally, we should have a rabbi involved, especially in those life decisions, because they're very, very, each details is very important. If it's in every situation is different. So generally speaking, we need to support the body wherever we can, and every moment of the person's living, it's something very special.
Now we know that when the body is, goes through the concept of passing, the soul is in a different space at the moment. Okay, he's still the soul is still hovering, but we know how do we treat the body. So for those of you that are familiar already, there's a person there's going to be a shomer, which means a guard that's going to stand with the body that just passed. So the soul is not in the body any longer, and that's what is happening to the body. And so we keep somebody always standing, praying next to that body out of respect. So this is all part of the respect that we show the body. And we purify the body with water. And I just read an article of how beautiful the body is treated. There's a woman that I knew who lived in Morristown. Her name was Miriam, I think, Cantor. And she was asked by someone in her community if she would volunteer and do this part of, this purification process of a body, for other women that pass away. And she says, you know what, I'm in the middle of raising my children. It's a very difficult time period in my life. But as her children grew up, she realized this is really something that she wanted to try to do. And she thought she was going to be like overwhelmed and have nightmares. And she said it was the most beautiful experience that she ever gave herself, was coming this. It says that it's chesed shel emet. When we give respect and honor to the body that passed, it's called the most truest mitzvah you can do, because you don't expect anything back at this point, right? There's nothing you can get in return. But she said how delicate and how careful they were, and how they were careful to keep the body covered and it shouldn't be exposed. And everything that was just dealt with and all the halachic things was all about preserving the body, keeping it intact, and preserving it in the most gentle way. And she thought this was the most beautiful mitzvah, that when she came home, not only did she not have any nightmares, but she felt there was something so holy about it, that we as Jews protect the body, protect the dignity of the body. And it was something that a mitzvah that she kept to all, and she's still continuing to do. And she just opened up my eyes to really how beautiful this is as well. And we know that the concept here is that after a person passes, we're going to talk about Shiva for a second. So the American version of sitting Shiva is something that we should probably do away with, okay? Because many people are stopping the Shiva now. They're not doing Shiva anymore because they don't see any value. And as a result of really how we were, observing it. How are we observing Shiva? At least those Shiva houses that I've been to here around this area, it became a party house. There's food flying, people with their loud voices and talking. You sometimes don't even realize that someone just, suffered the loss of somebody. And according to Judaism, a Shiva house is supposed to be very subdued. You're not supposed to talk until the people that are actually suffered the loss are going to start initiating conversation. You come, sit around, you sit, you offer comfort just by your presence, not by anything else, because truly there's nothing to say. It's only if the person who's sitting Shiva starts speaking about their loved one or wants the support or is asking for it, then you could respond. But it's not a place for levity. It's not a place for you to start eating your dinner there. It's really all about how you can serve the person who's sitting Shiva, give them drink, bring them food, but no one should be eating in a Shiva house aside from the people that are sitting Shiva. And so I think we lost that. And as a result, people don't want to be bothered with that. They look at it like as an invasion of privacy, and rightfully so, because no one's being sensitive to the needs of the people sitting Shiva. And so we have to keep in mind that sitting Shiva, there's a 3-day period and a 7-day period. The first 3 days of Shiva are supposed to be only for the family members. After that, it's for close friends to come and to offer their condolences and their comfort. The point of Shiva is to give a space for the grieving family to be able to cry, to be able to let loose, to be able to express their emotion. It's really a therapy process that Hashem designed for Jewish people to mourn of their loved ones. And we have to remember that and bring the original type of Shiva back into our society and into our community. And it's really important to keep that in mind. So we have the 3-day and the 7-day. And then after that, Hashem says, okay, now you can get up, try entering into the world a little bit. It's gonna be really hard. Surround yourself with supportive people, and then count the days down to 30. The 30th day, you commemorate with a 30th day. It's called Shloshim, and you commemorate it with learning words of Torah in memory of your loved one. Because here's the deal. When someone passes away, their soul has a journey of its own, but the soul doesn't have a body anymore. And so it needs to get to a place of where it needs to get to. How is it going to get there? Well, based on your good deeds in this world, it goes on its journey, but also based on the good deeds of your loved ones left here in this world. So the Rebbe would always tell people, I know you're upset, and I know you're sad, and I know you're going through all these emotions. What if you tried channeling all these emotions into doing something concrete and taking action to help your loved one's soul get to the higher place in their journey? And so we have to remember that. And we have to even teach our children that. That's what we want them to do after we pass. And so I think this is the education process that we're trying to now put out now into the universe of what is really supposed to happen. We tell people, empower, give charity after, do something after, have in mind your loved one. And so that is something we take in mind. And so the Kaddish now prayer, my husband's going to shed some light on what exactly is the Kaddish prayer and why is it so important. I can't tell you how many times we've paid for someone to say Kaddish for someone who didn't think it was important, or for a family member that didn't think it was important to say Kaddish for the loved one. And we understand that coming to synagogue every day and praying with a minyan is obviously almost impossible to do in our area of saying Kaddish daily, but there is an option. You pay somebody to say Kaddish. There are organizations that they add this person's, your loved one's name to the list, and someone daily will say Kaddish for those 12 months. And so we can't tell you how many people we've paid for Kaddish because family members didn't see the need. So now really try to understand what is the message, what is the purpose of saying Kaddish.
So actually, this past week on Thursday, I had a story. It came a non-Jewish person came to visit me because she had a good friend that is a Jewish person that he passed away, and and then and she saw the importance of the Kaddish for her friends, and this was very touched that her friends shared with her the importance of saying the Kaddish for the soul of the person. So if people have family, obviously it's very important the family do that, and if they don't have family, it's important that the family does it for them. So why is the Kaddish so important? Is because the Kaddish is, first of all, is an Aramaic prayers and could be done only with the minyan, with 10 people. And when we say the Kaddish, really doesn't say anything about the life of the loved ones. It say Gadal v'Itkadash Shemei Rabbah. Let's sanctify God's name. So why is this connected to the life of a loved ones? Because we know that life in this world, we want to leave a legacy. So when after the loved ones they passed away, they are continuing the grouping together of people, and this is the mentioning and bringing awareness that God exists and sanctify God's name. So it's almost like that person is continuing his work in this world, his legacy is continuing, and that is very important because without the group, with that we couldn't say Kaddish, and without having a special person to say Kaddish for, so the people wouldn't come. So for example, I remember this past week, somebody said in the Kiddush, in the meal, it says, why he appreciate everybody here? He appreciate because everybody came here so he could say Kaddish for his wife. And I was thinking about that. There's the importance of community and coming together so somebody could say Kaddish for the loved ones. So this is very, very important. And this is a way of connecting with the loved ones. Even after the passing, we say, oh, are we could we communicate with our loved ones? Yes, because the soul is not now just gone, it's still alive. And one way of communicating with the soul is through the Kaddish prayer, which is very powerful. Is a way of communication, but is also is a way of purification. Is a way of helping the soul, because the soul goes through a journey of cleansing and purification We don't have to go to all the details, but the Kaddish helps that journey of the soul, that cleansing. There is a very, very famous story about a person that he was suffering tremendously, and he kept on coming to dream of his children to say the Kaddish. And his children were not, and he kept on coming until they understood the message that he wants from them to say Kaddish because it will help his soul. It's quoted in the Talmud, this story, and this story is the foundation of the importance of the Kaddish for us to communicate with our loved one, but the main thing is for the cleansing process of the soul.
Right. And Kaddish is the way that we maintain connection with our loved ones. And like exactly like my husband said, it's the way that we help the soul get to where it needs to go. Every time we say a Kaddish prayer, we help elevate the soul to the next stage. It's a beautiful empowerment, right? As Jews, we're not victims. We're empowered people that through our action, we always have the ability to make an impact on someone else, something else, and even on a soul, we're able to make an impact. I mean, how powerful is that? So now I'm just going to go into very casually the next topic. I'm going to read you a quote. It says here, "For dust you are, and to dust you will return. Man's body comes from the earth and is left with him as a deposit. The deposit must be returned to earth from where it came." Okay, so these are verses from the Torah. And I'm just going to repeat the examples, some of them that I gave already, and add some more. We know that Adam, the first human being, buried his son Hevel. It's written in the Torah. Abraham, the first Jew, buried his wife Sarah. We have all these countings of it. Yitzchak, the son, buried his father Avram. Yaakov buried his wife Rachel on the side of the road. That's where she wanted to be buried. Yaakov wanted to be buried in the land of Israel. So he instructed his son Joseph, please send my body and bring it to the land of Israel. I don't want to be buried here in Egypt. And you have Yosef that said, okay, I know it's not possible to probably take my body out when I pass away. So put me in a coffin, put me in the water, and when you leave Egypt, take me with you. And the miracle was actually that the coffin rose in the Nile when it was time for them to leave Egypt. And they took Yosef's remains into the land of Israel. And it says that God personally buried Moshe. We don't even know where he's buried. And another quote, we have another situation, an accounting of, we have a famous woman, her name was Ruth. And Ruth is, she was a Moabite princess. She wasn't Jewish. And she wanted to follow her mother-in-law, who was Jewish, back to the land of Israel. And she has a quote. She told her mother-in-law, "Wherever you die, I will die, and there I will be buried." So the concept of being buried in the ground is a Jewish concept that even a non-Jew knew that it's a Jewish concept, and that's how she was going to be buried herself, okay? And so it says that the burial of Israel, the Kever Yisrael, is the highest priority in Judaism. I could tell you wild stories of people that were supposed to be cremated and things had to change. People got involved and then people were given proper burial. We will do everything for that. And so I want to just give you a statistic, if you could just bear with me through this, and it might not be so comfortable to hear, but I really, really want everyone to really pay attention to my following words right now. We'll answer your questions very shortly. I don't know if you know the statistic, but it says by the year of 2030, 70% of the people here in America are going to be cremated. Okay, that's the choices that we're making in America. And unfortunately, those the society choices and traditions are infiltrating our Jewish nation. Okay, and so that's something that we really need to be aware of. And we really need to understand the difference between cremation and having a regular organic green burial. And I'm going to explain to you, I'm going to get into details a little bit. Okay. So number one, we have to remember that we're being influenced. Okay. And we have to get our knowledge straight before we can make a decision ourselves. I'm going to here to provide you some knowledge. So first of all, okay, there's a lot of different, one second. Okay. So there's a question. What?
Yeah, so
let me just finish the topic, okay, if you don't mind. Okay, so we'll get to the question at the end. Thank you for your questions, and you could feel free to text more questions on the chat. Okay, so first of all, everyone understands that cremation destroys the body and makes it impossible to fulfill the biblical junction of burying the dead. So first of all, everyone has to understand that. If the body's cremated, you can't bury it. It's not fulfilling the biblical command that we have, that our body needs to go back into the earth. That's first of all, okay? Another point to keep in mind is that the body doesn't belong to us. Hashem is the owner, and it needs to go back to the owner how he wants it to go back, right? We borrow something from somebody. We can't decide if we borrow a picture, if we borrow a jug, a pitcher or something, we can't decide to add a design to it or to restructure a picture, okay? When we return it to who we borrowed it from. That's not how things work, okay? We also have to remember that one of our 13 principles of belief is believing in the resurrection of the dead, that there's going to be a time where the dead will come back to life, okay? So if that is the situation, then our body is of value even after we pass. Many people think that there's no need for the body anymore once the soul leaves it, and that's not true, okay? When we disrespect the body and we do get cremated, the implied statement that we're making is that we're rejecting Hashem's ownership of our bodies and of the holiness of the body, and we're rejecting the concept of the belief in the resurrection of the dead, okay? And what we're saying is we're making a permanent declaration that once the soul has departed from the body, that our lifeless body has no more purpose and no further value. And that's the statement we're making. And we have to be so careful because that is not true. According to Judaism, according to Torah, according to Hashem, how our tradition gave us a tradition for the last few thousand years, that's not our truth, okay? And so now let's understand the details of it, okay? People think that it's more environmentally friendly by being buried, by being cremated, okay? And so I want to read to you something, okay? That a statement from the Long Island, New York Jewish Funeral Home, okay? They have a statement on their website, and I want to read it to you. It says, because cremation is being chosen by more families today than in the past, Star of David Chapels will provide the service should families request it. But we feel it's our responsibility as a Jewish-owned and operated funeral home to make sure that those families requesting it are not doing so based upon common misconceptions and inaccurate information regarding its supposed ecological and environmental benefits or its financial savings. Two things that you should know before choosing cremation are, number one, the cost to the environment is much greater with the cremation process than it is with earth burial. The energy required to fuel a crematory, along with the smoke created by the process and spread into the environment, is significantly worse for our planet than earth burial in a wooden casket. And number two, if financial considerations are the reason you are considering cremation rather than burial, it need not be as. In many instances, we can provide earth burial for the same cost as cremation. Please contact us to discuss. And we want to make this very clear, that money should never be the reason why someone chooses to get cremated. There are ways, there are organizations, there are people that we know that support the burial earth process because they value and they know how important it is for that soul to get the proper burial for the body, okay? I just want to add something else. There's a few reasons why people will say why they prefer cremation. Okay, so just to review, number one, they say it's better for the environment, and that's just a myth. It's not true. The toxins and the fossil fuels are actually worse for the environment than a regular earth burial. People say that there's not enough land in this world, and that's not true. That's a myth because it says it takes 10,000 years. It'll take 10,000 years to use up 1% of landmass, okay? It'll take 10,000 years to, if everyone gets buried, it'll take 10,000 years just to use 1%. You could say that?
Yeah.
You could say it.
Yeah.
So repeat it.
No, it says it will take 10,000 years to use 1% of American landmass. Yeah.
Correct. Okay. And it says, so that's not true as far as not having enough lands. Another thing is it says that, well, no one's going to visit the grave anyway. We've heard recently people say it's going to be a burden to my children. to have me buried somewhere. I don't want them to have to come visit me. And the truth is, because we've been doing this for a really long time, it's just the opposite. The children find comfort knowing that there's a space for them to come to daven, to pray, and they feel the presence of their parent's soul or the relative's soul at the burial site. And even if they don't have anyone to go visit them, the soul finds comfort. It says that the soul is being tortured when there's no actual land space for the soul to rest. Because as we explained before, there's the first part of our soul, the nefesh, will always remain at the resting space, okay? For those people that have another complaint and they'll say, well, the concept of decomposition is disgusting. The thought of me, and I've heard this many times, the thought of me, you know, in the ground and with the bugs, I'm for sure getting cremated. The truth is, if you want to think about cremation, I'm not going into the graphic, but it takes 2 hours for the body to burn. If that is not more disgusting and more painful and more violent, I'm not sure what is, okay? The 2 hour to burn plus the 20-minute to pulverize, people have to read exactly an accounting of exactly what happens in a crematorium. They might change their mind, okay? And the concept of cheaper, well, there is a concept that it is cheaper if you do the most basic minimum, okay? But at the same time, we said that most funeral homes will say that money should not be the reason why you're choosing cremation. And you go to any Chabad rabbi and you say you can't afford a proper burial will be arranged without a question. So there's no excuse for someone to choose cremation because they don't have the means to do it.
In regards to cremation, or
What?
no? Okay.
Okay. Now, I just want to share a story that I just read. There was a woman in Israel, and she wasn't a practicing Jew, but she happened to be in a very observant neighborhood called Bnei Brak. Those of you that are familiar with Bnei Brak in Israel, she happened to be walking in Bnei Brak, and she unfortunately was hit by a car and she passed. And so the ambulance came, people tried to resuscitate her. They didn't know who she was. They tried to find out who her children were. They didn't know. So she must have been taken to a local hospital right there in Bnei Brak. And they didn't know she had any family. And so the people that were there said, you know what, we want to make sure that she gets a proper burial. But right away, the police came and they were saying that her body should be donated to, you know, to get an autopsy, all her organs should be donated, et cetera, et cetera. And she just should go for medical science for that. And the people that were in Bnei Brak, the observant people said, no, 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 no. A proper burial, this lady has, if she passed here, she has to have a proper burial. And they made a fence, a body fence, which I think they do this often, around the hospital, not allowing her body to be tested for science. Okay. And so the police had no choice, and the doctors decided, okay, fine, we'll agree, let her have a proper burial. We're not going to donate her body. They couldn't find any family member. She had no family member. So they gave her a proper burial. Thousands of people came to her burial. One person, two people said they're going to say Kaddish for her. Now, everyone was okay. They did this beautiful mitzvah. It was only a few months later that someone made the discovery, because they researched who this person was, and they discovered that this woman lived during the time of the Holocaust. And she was the one that ensured that every single person that died in her camp got a proper burial. She would take the body herself and make sure that the body would be in the ground and that someone would say Kaddish for this person. And I got the chills just thinking and just reading it and now just saying the story again, because you see that nothing that we do goes unnoticed by Hashem. The fact that this woman cared so much to give people during the Holocaust a proper burial, Hashem ensured that she had a 5-star burial with thousands of people attending, even though she had no family, and she got the respectful burial that she deserved. And that's what her soul needed, and that's what all our souls need. And so just to conclude, I'm going to repeat, I think, the same line again. I read it again in a book. It says, I may not have been the perfect Jew, and I'm speaking about that myself, but I'm a proud one. And I want to be buried as a Jew. I want to be buried as Jews have been for thousands of years. I owe it to my ancestors. I owe it to my descendants. I owe it to my body, and I owe it to my soul. And so I think just here, and I'll have my husband say his concluding and we'll answer the questions. But I think here, you know, we live on with our soul. There's no end. And we have to make sure that our children know what we want for after, because it may not be a given. And so Kaddish is super important. We should put it in our will that someone should say Kaddish for us. And if our children can't say it, then they should pay some money that someone should be saying Kaddish. No such thing as a cremation, because the same system of how cremations work and the same machines that work now to cremate our bodies is the same science technology that was used during the Holocaust. No Jew should ever be cremated. It was a disgrace then, and it was violent and barbaric, and it's the same now. Nothing has changed in the system. In fact, the Nazis who were in Germany that designed these crematoriums were the same Nazis that came to America and designed it for these funeral homes, okay, these crematoriums. A Jew is not supposed to get cremated. It's not the respect that our bodies deserve. And with this knowledge, I empower all of you to share this message with your friends. I've been talking about it for years, and I need to get the message out. So we're going to have, this recording is going to be available. Share it with your friends, give it over in your condensed way. Make sure that no Jew should be cremated. In addition to that, you should demand in the will that your children should sit Shiva for you, for their own benefit. For their own benefit. This is something that this is designed as a group therapy session for your children, and it should be something that you require of them in the most beautiful, positive way. So now, concluding remarks.
Yeah, so in regards to the Kaddish with the yard site, I see a couple of questions.
Read the question.
Yeah, so what the first question is with each year in Yizkor, does saying Kaddish help the soul each time on its journey? So the answer is yes. Every yard site, which is the anniversary of the day of passing, so there is an elevation of the soul. And that's why there is very important to say Kaddish on the day of the yard site, on the day of that passing day. And that is to help the elevation of the soul to go into the next phase. And the other question is, yes, we did learn about in the JLI course that the Kaddish is to help the soul move and the phases, the journey. So usually the Kaddish is recited for 11 months after the passing. So for 11 months, and we don't do it for 12 months specifically, but usually it's 11 months. And then on the day of passing every year. So that is on the yard side. The reason of the significance, thank you for your question, of Kriya. Kriya is the tearing of the garment, that when we start the funeral, we have the tearing of the garment. And usually for a parent, we tear on the left side, usually a couple of inches this way, which is the heart, because we want to do it towards the heart. But if it's for a sibling or for an uncle or something like that, so we do the tearing on the right side. And the significance for the tearing, because our garment represent our dignity and our dignity. And since the passing of our loved ones, our dignity is being teared, is being ripped. So that is the reason why we tear the garment, and to show to honor our loved ones, and to show that the garment, which usually dignify us, is being teared.
Our next question is, why in Judaism, when we visit the graveside, we put a little rock on the grave?
Oh, thank you for this question also. I wanted to mention before, it's our custom not to put flowers, even though flowers are beautiful, but after a couple of days or a couple of weeks, they deteriorate. But the reason to put a rock, because a rock is eternal. A rock doesn't get ruined, doesn't get consumed, and doesn't. But the deeper reason why we put a rock is because a rock in Hebrew is Evan, which Evan is made out of two words, Av and Ben, father, parent, and child. So when we put the rock, we're symbolizing the concept of continuing the legacy of our parents, their value system, and what they cherish so much. And we are continuing their work. It's like the concept of the Kaddish a little bit, but that rock represents the continuation of their work in this world through us. So that is the importance of the rock. And also sometimes we light a candle, because the candle is brought down in the verse that the candle is like the flame is like the soul, which like the flame is something that goes upwards, and the same thing is represents the soul. There's many explanation to this concept why the candle represents the soul, but this is something that the candle has. Should I explain? You want to explain? So the candle represents the fusion of the wick, the oil or the wax and the flame, which is the concept of body and soul, because the flame is spiritual. Why is the flame spiritual? Because the more we share the flame, the more flame, the more light we have. Usually when we share something physical, the more we share, the less we have. But here, the more we share, the more we have, because it's something spiritual. The flame goes upwards, which is going against gravity, because it wants to go back to its origin, which is the element of fire. But that's what also the soul is, that represents to the soul. But on a simple level is the candle is very much, on a yard site. That's why we light a candle for our loved ones, because the candle symbolizes the soul.
The next question is it true that we're not supposed to visit the gravesite for the first year to encourage the soul to ascend? Is there any
Okay,
source
this is an interesting question. There are different customs in regards to when to put the stone. Some people do it on, I know this is not your question, but I'm just elaborating on this concept. There is this concept of some people put it at the end of the Shiva, which is 7 days. Some people put it at the end of 30 days, and some people put it at the end of the year, or after the first year. But this is what you say, not to visit the gravesite for the first. The soldiers are
Can you repeat what you just said? I want it on the recording as well. Repeat it.
Yeah, the importance of burial is so important, because you could see these days the soldiers put themselves in danger to bring a body back to Israel for proper burial, even they passed away, because we
Value
value the proper burial.
and the respect for the
Yeah.